I don't know, probably like 10 years ago. That was like my DeviantArt account name. I don't know if you...
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I just kind of stuck with it. I know it's kind of dumb and sort of angsty sounding, but I was like, you know what, for consistency's sake, I'll just stick with it. It's got a ring to it. People remember it at least, so.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's quite, mnemonically easy to definitely remember your name.
Yeah.
And so there's no like significance of dead feline critters in your in your path.
I mean,
or wake.
I love my cats. I'm very much a cat person. Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of where it stemmed from to begin with. Like, I adore my cats. And I don't know. I had kind of the cliche teenager, like, preoccupation with death for a while. And when I was wee little, I had a phase where I drew, like, zombie cats. So it's kind of like, I don't know, an homage to that, too.
That's cool. Yeah, I like that. It's kind of got its own kind of etymology to it. That's nifty.
Yeah.
So, all right, who would you say was the? Before I get there, is there a food from your childhood that you could not stand, you just hated, and now in adulthood you're different about it and you like it?
I'd probably have to say scalloped potatoes.
Oh, wow.
I hated them as a child. I was just really, really sensitive. Like, certain smells, I would just be, like, hysterical. I hated them so much, like garlic bread. I was a really weird kid. But there was this one time when my mom was dumb enough to be like, I'm going to make tiny Michelle eat something. And it's going to go fine,
Right.
outside of, like, chicken nuggets. And she told me, you're going to eat some of these. And I'm like, I'm going to throw up if you make me eat that stuff. And sure enough, I did. And now I'm fine, I don't mind scalloped potatoes now.
Do you see that finickiness though manifesting in your adulthood?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm weird about certain things. Like, if on the rare occasions I go to like a really nice restaurant, like for a family dinner or something,
mm-hmm.
I don't like certain tastes, like anything too complex, like that mixes sweet and savory or like sweet and salty. I'm weird about stuff like that. And I actually have a ton of food allergies too, so that could partly be why I had an aversion to certain things when I was little. I don't know.
Let's see. Who would you say is the most influential person in your childhood?
Probably my mom. I was an only child, and so I was very isolated as a little kid. And just like the dynamic of the household I grew up in was one in which I relied on my mom for everything as far as emotional support, and for better or for worse, she kind of did the same for me. So like, she was my best friend and my protector, and so I would definitely say that my mom was the most influential person on me.
All right. Was there any dad in the picture?
Yes and no, kind of. He honestly wasn't there a lot. Like, he was working or he was just not there. And sometimes that entailed, like, we didn't know where the hell he was. So, like, he was there, the bare minimum.
So, but they remained married?
They did not. They divorced when I was around 10 or 11, which was really hard on me. But they're both much, much happier, more well-adjusted people now. So, it really sucked as a kid, but it worked out for the best in the long run.
Yeah, well, it takes a lot of, I guess, experience to be able to gaze back in retrospect and see the positive, out of it.
Yeah.
So that's something that I've detected in you too. That you've been through some kind of major self-analysis, and that's a good thing. So what kind of kid were you, besides being a finicky eater?
I was extremely, like, cripplingly shy. Super creative. I've been drawing since I could hold a crayon, just constantly. I don't know how to stop, whether it's drawing or writing. I'm always doing something like that, which kind of like expanded into my video making too. You know, I consider that the editing and the filming and the scripting a creative outlet as well. And even when I was wee little, I was very opinionated, and may have gotten me in trouble a couple times, but I was extremely shy, super artistic, and I loved animals then too. So,
what kind of like what kind of like city or in religious community did you grow up in?
It was a very rural place. I wasn't really around many other kids at all, and I was raised Catholic, but it was one of those scenarios in which the way my parents like pushed it on me completely alienated me from it. Like I despised church, and I still consider myself to be spiritual or kind of religious, but I never got anything out of like going to a Catholic church, you know.
I understand. Yeah, I call myself a recovering Catholic.
Yeah.
In a way. But you know, everybody's spiritual journey is very interesting to me too. Let's see. All right. So, and this is a good question I always ask people: is there a Christmas special or a Christmas carol or song that holds special meaning for you around that time of year?
I would probably say the old stop motion animation Rudolph movie. I loved that movie as a kid. We had it on video, and as it's funny when you like watch things when you're older, like you realize how absolutely bizarre and nonsensical things were that as a little kid, you know, you just went along with it. You had no frame of reference. You're like, this is great. So it was an interesting experience to like revisit that movie older, but that's definitely the
it's
one.
interesting. Yeah. And if you see it from like a sociological standpoint, you know, there's like the whole, implication, you know, like I identified more with the Misfit toys than I did with, you know, like Rudolph, you know.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I love Rudolph too. That's
Yeah.
that's my, you know, that's my guilt.
Yeah.
So if you could go back in time and talk to a young Chat-Mort at the age of 8, a young Michelle, what would you say? What would you tell her?
That's an interesting question. I would probably just tell myself or her that things were going to get really, really hard, but, you know, that everything would be okay, and just to not give up hope and to hang in there.
Right. So what was grade school like for you?
It wasn't too bad. I always had pretty good grades, and I mean, I got along with other kids okay. I had a couple pretty close friends who I'm still good friends with today, who I met, you know, as a pretty young kid. And it wasn't too bad. I mean, there were a couple instances I remember distinctly of getting picked on by people that were just very strange or irritating that had an impact on me. But I won a lot of, like, little art awards and things like that, too, for my paintings and drawings. And so it was not too bad.
Well, shoot, you know, a lot of times with artists, I'll like have them send me a package, a cache of stuff, and I do not do that with you. And I usually like to display some of their art. Is there a place that people can go and look at your art?
I mean, I still have my DeviantArt, and I've been trying to upload there again.
Mm-hmm.
I can link that to you at some point, but I'm trying to actually like maintain that a little bit.
All right, well, cool. I'll probably find it and pop it in the SOCMEDs down below.
Okay, and I do post my art on Instagram too, so. And that's also just chat_mort. So.
Have you ever met Brittany Breslin? Have you ever seen her
No.
stuff? Yeah.
No.
There's a couple and there's this girl named Fire that are pretty cool artists. Viper Sword. You might be aware. You might know who that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, what about in school? Did you have like any? Can you remember any like really hugely embarrassing thing that might have happened? Events.
I'm trying to think. I know pretty much any like speaking event or presentation was just mortifying to me. I absolutely hated that stuff. Um, I can't really think of anything else other than like in like certain social studies classes and things like that, I would get into political debates. I would never do it outside of class, but um, those were hard for me because I was very, very opinionated, but I was also extremely shy. So it was like I was always kind of having to fight internally to get the courage up to even respond to somebody, even if I was really opinionated on a specific issue. So I remember there were a couple times when I just wasn't sure what to say to people, or I knew how to respond to them during like really heated political debates in class, but it was like I just didn't even have it in me after speaking up a couple times to respond again, even though I could have like won those arguments, or I could have proven my point. So I think I kind of see most of the times when like the spotlight was on me, or I was unfortunately like I had attention drawn to myself, those are pretty much the like embarrassing times.
I would like for you to know that we are now live on YouTube. It's
Okay.
apparently started 8 minutes ago.
Okay, that works.
Yeah, no doubt. And if you missed the beginning, it's like just when this is up, just watch it back from the beginning. It's really, this is an awesome chick I'm talking to here. I'm just saying. I'm using the lingo. So speaking of, for everybody that doesn't know, how old are you now?
I'm 26.
Okay, you're 26.
Yeah.
So what was high school like?
High school was not fun. By that point, I'd become very resentful, I think. Just because of all the normal things, people decided that they had to start acting more mature than they were, is how I perceived it. People kind of start putting on this facade, or at least they did in my very small community, of sort of like being very scornful and disdainful of like all the video games or the cartoons or like the sense of humor that we all more or less collectively had when we were younger. And so I kind of like took on the identity of defying those people and rebelling against that. And the more I got picked on, which did happen a lot, the more resentful I became of all that.
Right.
And I kind of stuck my neck out for other people a lot who were getting picked on, and I think that made it harder on me, like some of the more nerdy kids. And I don't know, I was just very, very depressed and very angry, to be perfectly honest, through most of high school. And there were times, honestly, when like the reason I like stayed around when I was very depressed was like out of spite. I didn't want to give people the satisfaction of having succeeded at like driving me to, not be around anymore. But
do you mean like that metaphorically, or do you mean like suicide?
I mean suicide, yeah.
All right. What happened? Did you become suicidal?
I did. I was really depressed through most of high school, through late middle school and most of high school, honestly. I was kind of isolated aside from my friends at school. I was just really hopeless, and I think my anxiety made it much worse, because I dreaded completely normal, inevitable things. Anything where you had to give a presentation or anything where attention was drawn to me, I did not cope with it well at all. So.
So How did you seek any kind of help or anything? Did you get any type of professional assistance to help get through this? What was that experience like for you?
I've been to a litany of counselors throughout my life, some more helpful than others. One of them, the first one I actually saw when I started getting really, really depressed in high school, to where it was a critical level where I knew I had to actually be proactive about it and try to do something to alleviate it. I saw the same person for a while who I saw as a little kid, like when my parents first got divorced. And I think in many ways it was helpful, but it was also something where many times I was very prideful, or in a way I can be idealistic to a fault, to where I didn't want to get better in certain ways when it meant compromising or just finding common ground with people who I had like painted as these awful bullies and things like that. But I don't know, it's one of those things where I've had a lot of good experiences like with counselors, and I've had a lot of experiences where it just wasn't a good fit, or I at that point in my life was not willing to do the work necessary to get better. So it was an interesting experience.
And I think a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions with mental health professionals. Mental health professionals, doctors, lawyers, they're all like fucking car mechanics. There's some really good ones, and then there's some really shitty ones, and then there's some that will rip you off. You know? Yep. And this is interesting because this is the first time I've really explored on less than superficial level, about something about mental health. With somebody that I'm not close to. Yeah. Right. So, do you see yourself going to your 20-year class reunion?
I do not, no. I don't know. There have been times when I considered that, but I don't know. I feel as if I've made so much progress in my life that corresponds with not having to see any of those people anymore or deal with them, that I don't know. I don't really have any interest in it. I don't feel any kinship with the people who I happen to go to the same school with, so.
That kind of makes sense. I love asking this. This is one of my favorite questions. So tell me about the first time you got fucked up.
Like, drunk?
Whatever. It's subjective.
I guess that'd be the only thing, because like I have always been a very boring conservative kid. I've never even smoked pot or anything like that. So it was actually very recent. The first time I got like really, really drunk to where I severely regret it, and I actually blame Jeff Holiday in part for this. I tried Four Loko for the first time. I bought a can of it at the gas station because it's infamous because it's an energy drink that's also alcoholic, and just fundamentally an absolutely terrible idea. So I thought, I'll try one. And I have never been to any kind of party or anything like that. I was just like drinking it, watching TV with my fiance at home. And I kind of didn't feel great. My body was very clearly telling me, you're making a mistake here, kiddo. And I just, I was like, no, that's phenomenal. I'm enjoying this thoroughly. And I drank this enormous can of extremely alcoholic energy drink, essentially. And I woke up in the night, and it was one of those instances where I'm looking at the ceiling trying to figure out, why am I awake? Because normally I don't wake up easily at all. Normally it's like an incredible undertaking to wake up. So when I'm sitting there staring at the ceiling trying to figure out what's going on, then slowly I started to get really clammy, and my stomach didn't feel right. And, I'm thinking, oh no, oh God, no. So, I decided to drink a whole gargantuan can of Four Loko. Well, I was coming down with influenza and was not aware of it. So, that was a terrible night. Absolutely terrible.
Wow.
And I've not even looked at a can of that since. I'll stick with girly drinks, you know. I'll be fine with like a Mike's Limeade now. I'm not very adventurous anymore.
That's interesting. Do you have a favorite anime series? Oh no! What? All right. Before we talk about that, what about? All right. So what happened after you graduated from high school?
You mean just life events after that?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, did you go out on your own? Did you join the military? What did you do? Did you go to school?
Yeah, I did go to school. I immediately went to a kind of a local college for a little while. And I actually didn't get my driver's license until I got out of high school. And it was kind of a whole bunch of events that intersected that summer after high school that prompted me to grow up in ways that I just kind of hadn't due to my anxiety, and in some ways making excuses because my anxiety was so bad. My mom actually, when I was younger, like right when she and my dad were splitting up, was diagnosed with breast cancer. So she was going through chemo and working a full-time job and a part-time job to try and make enough money for her and I to move out, like while my dad was like, I'm leaving you, sorry. So then that summer after high school, she started, just out of nowhere, she was at work and she started coughing up blood. And her first thought was, despite the fact that she'd been in remission for years, her first thought was, my cancer metastasized, you know. It never went away, it's in my lungs now. So there was this whole incident, you know, where she was going through all these tests and she like immediately dropped everything, left work and went to the emergency room. And it was due to all that I was forced to grow up a lot more, you know. Like, my mom was sick, I couldn't expect her to be driving me everywhere. I couldn't sit at home feeling bad for myself because things at home needed taken care of and stuff like that. So it wasn't until after high school that I finally got my driver's license, and I did go straight into college. And it turns out she just had pneumonia. She's just like really, really hardy to a ridiculous, irritating extent where she doesn't know that she's sick until she's basically on death's door. So that's what happened there. But yeah, I got a part-time job and got my bachelor's degree. And it was just a couple years ago that I actually finally moved out when I was finished. Yeah, I think I was finished with college, and then I moved in with my fiance, and I have been with him since. So it was more or less pretty uneventful, pretty average in that regard.
Well, okay, so what was your major?
It was corporate communications.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So were you able to place within your study afterwards?
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, that kind of pertains to my job. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. You want to tell people what you do for a living, or?
Not really. I just don't want anybody to get
I feel you.
Screwed over or harassed because I'm a conservative.
I get you. Oh,
Yeah.
Mom's the word.
Yeah, I'm kind of
People.
paranoid about that.
Yeah, I feel you. I think I'm paranoid too.
Yeah.
So, all right. I usually ask this to ladies, especially younger ladies, or on the YouTubes and Twitter. Do you find yourself getting unwanted attention from creeps asking for pictures of your feet and stupid shit like that?
I think I've only gotten like the feet thing maybe once or twice. I do get a little bit of that now that I've tried to start streaming. I stream various strategy games and just very like laid back games on Twitch, and I do get some very peculiar messages on there from people. But not all that much, fortunately.
Yeah, trolls gonna troll, aren't they?
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. And you come to love some of those trolls, and then you come to love to hate some of those trolls. Just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not directed at you. That's directed at somebody in the chat. You know who you are, and they all say
Thanks.
it's me. So all right, what would you tell like a new young lady? You know, it's like, well, all right, if you get, you know, she says, oh my God, this, blah, 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 you know, this guy is asking me for, you know, what would you tell? What kind of advice would you give?
I would just tell them to. I know some people just kind of ignore things like that, but I don't necessarily think that helps a lot of the time. I would probably tell them just be straightforward, you know? I mean, if you're in the headspace of, sure, let's negotiate, how much money do you want? Like, that's one thing, but I just think it's better to be straightforward with people like that, you know? Just tell them I'm not interested in that. I don't appreciate that. So at least if somebody gets enraged that you block them or you're not doing what they want, you can fall back on the fact that you were direct and upfront with them and just said, I would appreciate if you didn't make requests like that, or, you know, just be honest with people, and then at least you can fall back on that if they freak out and block you and say, this person isn't entitled, you know, bitch or something.
Right. Right.
Just try and, even if people are complete lunatics, just try and give them the benefit of the doubt. Just be respectful, and I don't know. But don't tolerate a lot of crap either, because I've let people walk all over me because I want approval so much, and because I'm so shy and I don't like rejection and conflict, ironically, for someone who is really invested in politics, you know. You also have to be firm with people, you know. You gotta put your foot down if they're really pushy or exceedingly creepy.
That makes sense to me, you know, because I don't know. I don't know what I would do. I would probably, you know, I don't know. I don't know what I'd do, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I look like Ernest Borgnine with the flesh-eating bacteria. Yeah, all right, so I noticed, you know, through doing, you know, I do a little bit of research on people when I try to have them at, and I did notice you were you were engaged.
Yeah.
And so you and your fiance are cohabitating.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, which is makes for a different dynamic. A lot of times on the internet, I run into people that are in relationships that are long distance, you know.
Yeah.
It can be very problematic for them. So how did you guys meet?
We actually met in the anime club at the college I went to. So, yeah, he was an advisor, and I had a crush on him right away, and we get along really well. We have a lot of the same interests, and we're just different enough that we can have some really stimulating debates and discussions and things. Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, and I did forget to hold on a second, because I thought I had an anime question here. You know what? I did. So all right, let's stop at the anime thing.
Yeah.
So tell me about your history with anime, because I'm going through this journey with anime right now. And,
yeah.
I'm trying to find. I'll be honest with you. There's well, Brian and I, the guy that I do my little TV, Netflix, whatever it is, critic show. Everything we've seen that was new, you know, it looks horrible, and it's just bad, right? But the older stuff, I've got some respect for, especially, you know, stuff like Akira and I'm going to say, you know, about Cowboy Bebop, you know, shit like that.
Yes.
Robotech. Yeah. That's the classic, I think, the classic era where anime was really doing its thing, and the art, you know, was a lot more emphasized. I see a lot of lazy shit going on in the newer stuff. So what do you think?
I think a bit of both. I think there's some phenomenal anime coming out now. I know it's very cliche and everybody talks about it, but I think My Hero Academia in particular is written phenomenally. I think the character development and just how intricate some of their relationships are is it's kind of like a cut above most sort of like fighting style anime that's geared toward teenage boys, sort of the like shonen demographic. But I do think that nowadays it's just so saturated. Like every season you have to pour through these lists of like hundreds of new anime that are coming out, and there's no way to get through it all, and there's no way to like find everything good, and there is a lot of very mediocre stuff or just lackluster stuff. And
So would you identify yourself as weeb trash?
Yeah, probably.
Really? Okay. I've got a friend that calls herself that, and I think it's funny as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, some of the classics, I do think that a good portion of my favorites are kind of from that prior era. Cowboy Bebop is phenomenal. Yu Yu Hakusho is phenomenal. I still am very sentimental about Dragon Ball Z. Like, I do think that some of the older anime is amazing.
See, that's something I never got. I never did the Dragon Ball Z thing because I was too old. I'm an old man. So,
Yeah.
you know, and so if you wanted to win me over to think more highly, I guess, of newer anime, what 3 shows would you tell me to watch?
Oh boy. I would say ReZero. ReZero is phenomenal. Sankareya is kind of an unpopular one. It's kind of unknown and it's odd, but that one to me was really striking and unique. And a third one. What third one? I don't know.
Hero Academia? What was it called?
Yeah, My Hero Academia. I think it's one of those things. I don't know if you've heard of like Naruto and One Piece, but it's one of the things that the publisher of a lot of the manga, I think they kind of select series that they think will be really profitable, and then they really, really promote and elevate them.
Mm-hmm.
So I know a lot of people dislike it because it's so wildly popular, but I do think, despite the fact that it's a very cliche mega power sort of fighting type coming of age show, the character development and the depth of the characters is phenomenal, and I think that kind of elevates it above a lot of shows of that genre that they all seem kind of very similar, especially in the fact that they have one-dimensional characters.
Right. And that's something that I noticed about a lot of this stuff that I was seeing on Netflix is that some of it was apparently, made on this template or formula that I wasn't privy to. So I didn't know, where to make the logical leaps and stuff, right? And I think that what I've seen a lot is they do that, right? And I think that's where it falls short for me with the newer stuff. It seems like the older stuff was more written, and was more concerned with, the narrative kind of leading everything instead of sometimes just the action or just making these leaps and stuff. It's just like, what the fuck is it? Well, so so it's like an old fucker like me can't. Sometimes you gotta spell it out for me, right?
Well, and you shouldn't have to make excuses for shows either. It doesn't matter what genre a show is. The story and particularly the characters need to be the driving force. If the characters are not compelling, it doesn't matter how pretty and flashy it is. That's only going to appeal to a very small demographic. You need to have compelling, believable characters that people are going to get engaged in, and the story needs to make sense. I think that should just be a common theme and the default for anime or any genre of entertainment.
So what was the anime that drew you and your fiance together?
He was the first person to make me watch Yu Yu Hakusho, which came out in the early, probably mid 90s. I would say it came out. I'm not sure when specifically, but it was a show that I had seen a little bit on TV, but I wasn't particularly interested in, and it's his favorite series. So watching that with him was a really cool bonding experience because it was something that I kind of glossed over as a kid, in favor of things that were flashier and the stakes seemed higher, like Dragon Ball Z. But the more I watched it, the more I got to see everything that he thought was so amazing about it. And it's a beautiful show. The animation, the character designs, the stories are very interesting. And that was the first series that we really sat down and watched together.
Cool. So how long you guys been together now?
Around 6 years, I think. I don't keep track of it very well, but around 6 years
Okay.
now.
Yeah. So it's good. Solid. In a good groove.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when did you realize you were in love with him?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. Probably pretty early on. I had a crush on him. I really liked him, and I'm so used to being the person who is rejected and the unrequited person as far as my feelings that I was actually trying to get over him before ever really even talking to him. And then my friend, who's one of my best friends now, who was the president of the club, said, "What are you doing? Like, you haven't even tried to find out if he is interested in you or not yet. And you're already assuming the worst." But we talked on the phone for like 5 to 6 hours, maybe 3 or 4 nights in a row. And that was really the first time we ever talked. And I think he has said to me since that he pretty much knew from those first couple nights when we talked, just, had hours and hours of conversation, that he pretty much knew that he loved me. And I think I probably felt the same way. It was probably distorted for me though as well, because I was so stunned and unsure of how to act in a situation where the person I liked really, really liked me back, that I'm not sure. I think I was just so astounded and giddy about that I probably loved him before I realized I did. So I don't know exactly. I can't give you like a specific time when I was like, man, this guy's really cool.
Yeah, I dig it. That's why I asked the question, because it gets you to explore the idea.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a interesting question to ask somebody, especially if they're in a really happy, successful relationship.
Yeah.
So let's see. What's your favorite thing about him that he would hate it if we knew about it?
Oh, he'd be so pissed if he saw this. I hope he doesn't. He is the sweetest, kindest, most loving person. Like, and I know it's silly, like, we obviously do not have kids yet, and just how sweet and loving he is to our cats is just how the way he treats animals has really made me see him as he's a remarkable, really decent person. That's a huge factor for me in kind of evaluating people, whether they're kind or compassionate to animals or not. And he's just so sweet with them, and it makes me so happy.
So, and do you see yourself like maybe setting up shop and having kids with this guy?
I don't know. I mean, I certainly do not plan to ever not be with him.
Right.
I'm kind of in it for the long haul, of course, but I have never wanted kids. And unless there's some like drastic life-changing event that shifts my whole worldview, I can't really see that ever happening.
That's interesting. It's I'll talk to you about my wife and I are the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Boom, boom. I gotta go back to my questions. We're coming. I like it when we go on this, these little journeys, because it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. All right. So, entertainment wise, what do you tend? What are you drawn towards? Like spiritual, philosophical, historical, drama, sci-fi, horror. Like what you'd rather when it comes to.
I like some drama, if the characters are compelling. I don't like things that are just about the conflict or the scandal or whatever it may be at the time. I'm really drawn toward a lot of really dark stuff, a lot of sort of like crime, mystery, thriller type things, some sort of horror or science fiction things, but I find myself mostly the last couple of years being drawn toward just really, really dark sort of crime thriller type entertainment.
Have you seen Mindhunters on
Yes.
Netflix? Oh, Man That Killer.
Oh,
I read that guy's books.
it's amazing.
Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah, those books are great too. I recommend them.
Are they really?
Yeah, what kind of books do you like?
I like Stephen King. I like things like that. I like a lot of fantasy type stuff as well. Of course, the Game of Thrones books. And I also read a lot of true crime. And yeah, for me, as far as books, it's kind of all over the place. I don't tend to go toward anything lighthearted and comedic, that kind of fiction, and I don't care for, like, I don't know, some self-improvement books that have a very, like, happy, cheesy tone. I don't care for things like that, but pretty much anything else, whether it's fantasy or horror or some sci-fi, some, like, Shakespearean type classic too. I'll read pretty much anything, or I'll give anything a shot.
Cool. So do you set time out to actually read books and stuff, or do you? A lot of people use books on tape now or audiobooks, and how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I don't have a Kindle or anything like that, and that's one of the ways in which I'm pretty idealistic. I don't care for it because I kind of attribute little local bookstores and things like that closing to the fact that people can download something and read it that way. I need to be able to, like, feel, I need to have the physical book in my hands. I need to be able to smell the pages. I've never listened to an audiobook ever, and I should try to set aside more time to read, because there's so many things that I have or that I plan to read that I just haven't gotten around to, but it tends to just kind of be like when I've got downtime at my job, or just sort of here and there throughout the day, I'll intermittently pick up a book.
So do you? You talked earlier about having, like, being politically opinionated and everything. How does that play into your relationship with your husband, and maybe, like, the stuff that you do consume book wise?
I don't read much, like, political literature. I did when I was younger. Like, in middle school and high school, I would read, like, Ann Coulter's books, Bill O'Reilly's books,
Wow.
things like that. But he was actually a lot more leftist. I don't want to say liberal exactly, since that term has become almost meaningless and perverted, as of late.
Right.
But he was definitely, like, more pro-socialism and things like that when we first met. And I don't want to, completely take credit for it, but he's definitely much more conservative now, and he would identify as a conservative.
That's interesting.
And yeah. And I don't know. I don't read a lot of, like, politically oriented literature, and I think he does some, but he more just consumes, like, podcasts and things like that.
So, all right, in the politically polarized, situation that you see in the country today,
Yeah.
what alarms you the most?
I think the total loss of civility. I think the fact that violence is now justified against people who hurt your feelings. The idea that you can just label and essentially dehumanize a whole swath of people just for believing different things than you about, taxes or immigration or things like that. That's terrifying to me. Like the fact that many people, and obviously the right is clearly at fault as well. I don't want to just point fingers, but
No
the fact
doubt.
that people on the far left are more likely to be sympathetic toward members of ISIS than they are toward people who just voted for a different person than them here in the same country is terrifying to me. You know, I've said this in my videos, which you've probably seen, but I don't see how you come back from that as a society.
Right. You know, and that's a, you know, that's a huge discussion maybe for another time. Because it's like I totally see exactly what you're saying, and I think that the jettisoning of you know, courtesy and just conversation about these kind of things is just it's alarming and it's disturbing and it's kind of sad, because I think that's the way that the people that, you know, are sucking us dry want it to be. You know, they want us to be at each other's throats, so we don't really focus on what they're not doing.
Yeah, and it's sad because it's so transparent and it's so heavy-handed, yet
Indeed.
people don't focus on history. They don't research anything. They don't consider what other people have to say. You know, so people just fall for it. And it's scary to me how accelerated it has become. You know, how eager people are, I guess, to fall into just finding like political excuses for their anger and resentment and hatred of others. It's really alarming to me.
Indeed. So to kind of shift down a little bit, because it's like, you know, the one thing I do have a problem with is the double standard stuff that I see, you know, that can bug the shit out of me. I think consistency is important with anybody. So, all right. So let's kind of shift gears and talk about you. It's like, do you have any guilty pleasures, like when it comes to eating or maybe music and movies? You know.
I don't, like, food wise. I don't know. I don't know that I really have any guilty pleasures. Music wise, I would probably have to say Hollywood Undead is my guilty pleasure. I don't know if you've listened to them at all, but normally I don't listen to anything with rap in it. Normally I don't listen to anything that's very sort of like combative and in your face, you know, that sort of like culture.
Right.
But Hollywood Undead, the way they mesh sort of metal and rap and hard rock it's just so catchy and charming. And so they're the one exception as far as a genre of music that I just on principle despise. So, yeah.
It's poppy for me.
Yeah.
And what about movies? This like I love fucking Starship Troopers. Every time that movie's on, and I see it, I'll just stop and just watch it. Right?
Yeah.
What about you?
I guess I would have to say things like the Underworld movies, or things that have to do with like things that are adapted from video games that everybody universally is just supposed to hate, like the Silent Hill or the Resident Evil movie adaptations.
Yeah,
I love those. Like, sure, they're terrible, but I can't help myself. I love them.
Uwe Boll. Yeah, that's great. That's great. See, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Yes.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite Game of Thrones character? Ooh.
Oh.
Curveball.
Probably Brienne of Tarth.
Wow, man. You and Uzi Q, my wife, have the exact same taste.
I love her.
Yeah.
I love Jamie
like
and
you.
Brienne.
You would like her.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, what's the weirdest thing that you've seen on YouTube to mind?
Oh my God. Oh boy. That's I don't know. I've seen so many things that you just sit there and you look around the room like, is this real? Am I having a stroke?
I know, man.
I don't know. Oh my God, that's a really good question. maybe some of the really strange, like, dermatology type videos that are so huge now.
Right. Pimple popper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get how that would be cathartic for people to watch. You know, if you've got, like, OCD, or, you know, if you're watching that as opposed to, like, picking at yourself, that's awesome. I see how that could be productive. But, I mean, that can veer into some weird territory. Like, super close-up videos with strange captions of another language over them that are just, like a 30-second clip of, like, an ultra close-up of a blackhead. Like, I'm not sure I see the merit in that. I don't know.
Yeah, that macro photography and shit.
Yeah.
It's like, holy moly. I mean, wow. So if you were given the keys to YouTube, what would you do? It's yours. You can do whatever you want to with it.
Oh my god.
You're the queen.
I would immediately ask to be briefed on and given all the information on all of the suppression that's clearly going on. All of the keywords that cause people to not be promoted, that cause people to be essentially, like, factored out of the algorithm altogether in any kind of promotion. And I would do away with all of that altogether. Everything aside from things that are overt, you know, indefensible things like horrible violence and things like that. I would completely overhaul and undo all of the subtle but very apparent censorship that's going on and the political bias. I would get rid of all that if I could.
Right. Let's see. So so now we're in the YouTube neighborhood. Why don't you talk a little bit about your channel and what, you know, a typical day looks for you, and with what you're doing with YouTube, which is the best way to say your content.
Yeah. I do political commentary, but I also do some cultural commentary, and I try to look at different issues, whether they have to do with sort of, I don't know, PR type issues and YouTube scandals, or phenomena that I see going on with older people, like on Facebook or in real life, or just sort of more conventional things, like things I see in the news. I do a lot of commentary on those things, sort of from a conservative perspective, but I also am kind of moderate or leftist on certain things. And a lot of my channel, I also have kind of gravitated towards calling out things that I see fellow conservatives doing that I think are counterintuitive, that will hurt our cause, or that will give the far left, you know, perfect fodder to try and paint us all as awful or petty or hypocrites. So I have kind of, like, geared toward a lot of criticizing certain behaviors I see and talking points on the right as well. And it's interesting because I didn't really do that much at first, so the little bit of an audience I've accumulated, some of them do not care for that at all. You know, they see me pointing out something that's really destructive and hypocritical that conservatives are doing that's going to hurt our cause in the long run, and immediately, you know, they dislike the video and don't want to hear about it. But I don't know. I also do some content regarding mental health. I did kind of a little series as I tried to taper off of the antidepressant I'd been on for almost 10 years, because that was really, really difficult. And there's not a lot of anecdotal experience out there or content about just people's experiences going through withdrawal from stuff like that, how that affects their mental health and their day-to-day functioning. So I try to use that aspect of my life to kind of be informative and hopefully sort of encouraging to other people who are seeking out anybody going through something similar, or trying to see, is it possible to get through something like this? So I try to put out around 2 videos a week. That some weeks that doesn't happen, and other weeks I do a lot more. But some of my videos are scripted, and those definitely tend to be more succinct. I tend to be extremely long-winded, if you couldn't tell already. But some of my videos are off the cuff. I do just streams talking to my chat as well. So it's kind of a mixed bag.
As a matter of fact, Ryder just showed up. Hey, man. Yeah. I like Ryder.
Yeah.
Ron's a good guy. Let's see. Yeah, the chat's been the chat today. Yes, I like to refer to them as the chat sometimes.
Yeah.
They're gaming, yelling. You know who you are. I like you still. He likes people.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me feel uncomfortable. It makes me feel funny down there. I don't know what to do. So, all right, let's see. Is there anything about you that I haven't asked that you want people to know about you?
Oh, wow. That's an interesting question. I'm a pretty good writer. I love writing. My dream would be to be a novelist full time. And I don't apply myself a lot. I don't do it as often as I should. I'm trying to work on a couple short stories. I write a ton of fan fiction, which actually is the opposite of something I want you to know and tell everybody. But I do a lot of writing, and I've gotten a couple like little local writing awards for it and little scholarships and things like that for it. So that's a passion of mine, and I need to start applying myself actually. So there's stuff out there for people to consume if they're interested by that.
Yeah, that's something I noticed about you. You're very just creative, and it seems like to me that there's a lot of catharsis in everything that you do, right? And in your content, it really shows it, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and I like the way you interact with, with your chat. It's like a conversation.
Yeah,
it's good stuff. So, all right, we're kind of getting towards the end of the deal. So, who would you say your favorite YouTuber is right now?
Oh my gosh. Can I name a couple?
Please.
Can I?
Please
all right.
do.
I have to say one of my favorites is Scribe. I love Scribe. I just love the stuff he covers. I love his, interest in literature. The tone he takes in his videos is entertaining and interesting, and he's a really good friend. So Scribe is definitely one of my favorites. I love Dankula, of course. I think his content is hysterically funny, and part of me wonders if the entire debacle with him being persecuted for making an off-color video online, if that all wasn't just like an elaborate scheme to get people to learn more about history, since he's doing his Mad Lads series that talks about fascinating, ridiculous people throughout history.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah, it's good shit.
Yeah.
I like it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd have to say, in general, my favorite YouTuber would be Oni NG. He's an animator, and he has his own, Let's Play channel, and his sense of humor is just hysterical. I adore it.
Cool.
So, yeah, those are probably my main favorites.
Who would you say? Who would you say is a criminally undersubbed YouTuber?
Oh man, I think there are a lot of them. I'd probably say your channel, to be perfectly honest. I really like your interviews.
Oh, well, thanks. And it's like, you're right. You're fixing to hit the 1K mark.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. It opens up for more things.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that Scribe Light's severely undersubbed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you are too. I think that if people like just sat down and watched just a couple of your videos, just in the random order, I think that there's more there, and it's obvious, and you want to watch it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I try to make stuff that, it's topical, but I want it to be an escape for people. I want it to be a source of happiness for people. Even if you're laughing at my expense, at least you're laughing. Yeah. I just want to do something good to make people feel a little bit better about themselves and their lives.
Good, and I get that. I get that from your stuff. So all right. So this is a good question too. Is who do you think's just a YouTuber that's overhyped and just like, I don't get it?
Oh boy. I don't know. I'm so scared to say anything, you know.
You can say
But
anything you want, man. We still in the U.S. I am, at least.
yeah, to be perfectly honest, I'm reluctant to say anything about anybody, but I'd have to say I don't really understand why Armored Skeptic's channel is quite as big as it is. I absolutely respect all the work and editing he puts into his videos. I get it, and obviously there's something there that resonates with people, and I respect that. But I don't know. His content to me a lot of the time seems like finding ways to say nothing in a very long-winded way, or not add a whole lot that's very innovative or compelling to the conversation about any political topic.
Right.
You know, it's not my cup of tea. I wish him the best, but it's not my cup of tea.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, because usually, you can be expedient in what you need to say, and you don't have to fluff it up with a lot of rhetoric, Yeah. Well,
Which, to be fair, is one of my problems as well. I know I'm very long-winded, and
but what I've noticed is that when you're articulating, it's like you tend to want to take different angles. It's like looking at a tree, right?
Yeah.
From different angles, it's going to look differently, right? And you try to get a more accurate picture of what the tree actually is.
yeah.
So and I get that from you. Sometimes it's with some of these people, it's like you could have got your point across to me a lot quicker without any type of just, I don't know, man, just wasting time.
Yeah.
It doesn't come off as wasting time what I saw with you. All right.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm trying.
Your process is very concrete and very very followable. So before we part, is there anything coming up that you want to promote? You want everybody to check out?
Oh man, I don't know. My channel. I want to promote my channel, I guess.
Yeah.
I always try to do live streams and just talk to the audience. I'm trying to do more where I'm actually conversing with other people in the stream. But I like to just chat with the chat. I like talking to those people because their support is why I'm where I am. And I've got a couple hopefully entertaining videos coming up soon. So, they will be out at some point.
So what I figured out is that this thing started like 5 minutes into us talking.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So 5 minutes of it was the countdown and the song.
Yeah.
And so if you caught this, then you caught most of everything. So, but I still recommend you look at the playback, and all of Chat-Mort's information is in the description. YouTube, Twitter, and Gab. And if there's anything else, your DeviantArt, etc., anything else you want, just throw it at me, and I'll make sure I put it in the description there.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
So what do you think? Did you enjoy this?
Yeah, I enjoyed this thoroughly. I really like how laid back you are. You really have genuine conversations with people, and it's a lot of fun, I think.
Yeah, a lot of time, and it's really weird because I'm having to focus on the production side of this thing too, and a lot of times, I lose focus listening to people, because that's really what I like to do the most, is just listen. So. But shoot, on that note, I don't know. I guess next week we've got Mad Dodge. And then the week after that, we got Catagot coming, a lady that I stream with occasionally with Cynical Lindsay. And then on the 23rd, Drunken Uncle. So that should be a load in the pants, as they say.
Yeah.
So I guess it's time to say goodbye. So you
all right.
Say bye to the chat and bye to the people.
Bye, chat. Thank you for hanging out and listening to my nonsense. I I really do appreciate it, and I appreciate what you do here on your channel. It's very cool.
Well, thanks. All right, and we're out.
Every week on Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern, the Creem stream, the weekly world news for YouTube. Sundays, 5 p.m. Eastern, the ice cream interviews, fascinating people, fascinating people. Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern, hot takes with the Butter Baron, watching horrible shit so you don't have to. Subscribe to IRATE Prostate now.